a short segment on crafting rubrics. So if you recall the student feedback and improvement cycle, crafting and making clear rubrics for students is a really important piece of it. And I had made an analogy between NASA or NSF having a really clear rubric by which they evaluate grants being important. So how do we do this? Where do we start? There's so many different types of assessments and rubrics that are going to be really discipline specific. But one type of rubric that I think is applicable to many contexts is something called feedback codes. And something we're always balancing as instructors is that concrete and rapid feedback helps students improve, but we only have so much time. So I asked Stephanie to tell us a little about a method for giving students some quick and helpful feedback on their homework.
So one of the things that's really important in education is getting feedback on your work, because without that feedback it's really hard to improve. But as an instructor, it's really hard to give feedback on many students' papers and calculations. So one of the ways that you can save time is to use feedback codes. So let me give you an example. So imagine we've got a problem. So this is a pretty standard physics problem. We've got two carts on a track and they collide and bounce off each other. And we're asking students to do some calculations about the situation. So the students are going to be making some pretty common errors, and it's going to be kind of time consuming to go through and write out detailed feedback for every single problem. So what you do instead is have your grader go through a set of the student papers first and see what some of the common mistakes are that students are making. And then use those common mistakes to come up with feedback codes. So here you can see is an example of feedback codes for this problem. So they're very specific to the problem, although they don't necessarily have to be. It depends on your particular course. And they're giving students feedback as to what kinds of things they're doing wrong and some guidance for the future. So this would be really helpful for students to read this and get a sense of where they stood. So it gives students a lot of feedback, but without increasing substantially your grading burden and your time. So this is also really helpful for you as an instructor, because you get to see how student approaches fall into various categories. You know, are they making conceptual errors, or are they more procedural errors? You might give a point value to each code, so you're actually using this to assign a grade to each problem, but I don't necessarily recommend communicating that to the students, because you want the students to be really focusing on the content of your feedback rather than what score they're giving. And this also really relieves some of the grading burden for your graders, because they no longer have to think about, oh, I take off a half a point if they missed a sign error or something like that, but rather they're looking at the overall quality of the response and in general how well of a job the student did, and doing their grading based on that.
So feedback codes can help give students quick and concrete ideas about how to improve. And there's a lot of great resources out there on crafting rubrics across STEM disciplines for everything from oral presentations to traditional exams. And I really encourage you to check out some of the ones that are going to be most useful and applicable to your own context.